What's up, guys? Welcome to the Press Start Discussion Lounge. I'm Sam, and joining me today are Shawn
Hey guys.
and Tam.
Hey, yo.
Today we're going to be discussing graphics and gameplay, as well as storyline and character development, and which one is more important when playing a video game. So, I know Tam's view, so I'm going to hold off on that for a second. Shawn, what is your perspective on it?
I'm actually on the fence. I did hear what Tam's point of view is. He's very heavy gameplay.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm sort of in the middle as far as gameplay versus story, where as like in my past, I would say that I prefer games that are pure gameplay. I'd side with Tam because like I didn't really need a story back then. Most of the sort of like older generations of consoles, they had a lot of games that focused on gameplay, and it was very addicting gameplay. However, what we've seen with like the last console generation in particular is a rise in games that don't exactly focus on gameplay, but have a very strong story. In particular, I'm pointing a strong finger at Heavy Rain, a game that whenever I first started playing it, I thought the gameplay was really rugged. It didn't really seem very like intuitive.
It was more of a cinematic experience.
Yeah, it was more of Heavy Rain the movie. It could have very well been filmed, but
Like shaving your face for 5 minutes straight?
Yeah.
But then as you keep playing the game, and the gameplay did work along with very high suspenseful moments, and it's just the story left me really wanting to visit it again. I was really impressed by the end of it. Whereas on the other side of it, I just also played Killzone Shadowfall. I just got a PS4 and finished playing that, and the gameplay is phenomenal. It's very smooth combat. Everything just makes sense. It's a very good first-person shooter. However, there is no story really backing it up, or at least there is a story, but it's not enough to keep your attention, and I got bored of the game.
Is Killzone like known for a story, like a strong narrative?
I've played Killzone 2 and 3, and the story was enough at least to drive the game. And this one, it really felt like a falling off of that. It did improve in gameplay, though.
Sam, you were shaking your head. Like, I guess you just.
I've read reviews of the games and stuff. I've never actually played them, but from every single thing, mostly because I've never seen anything that promotes a good story. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I appreciate gameplay. Gameplay is obviously very important to me. But like the games that I would consider my favorite games are not games that have only good gameplay. Like I need to have a relation with the character. Otherwise, I'm just kind of sitting there moving around some strange dude, and I'm like, okay, cool.
See, I feel like if your gameplay is really solid, you should naturally like make a connection with the character. So, a game like Devil May Cry 3, for example, there's like barely any cutscenes in that game. Like the character of Dante, he doesn't really get much development through the story in Devil May Cry 3, but the gameplay is freaking incredible in that game. Right, like it really overshadows the story to the point where you don't even care. You just want to go from room to room, just killing monsters. Same thing, like I was just mentioning, monsters. Monster Hunter. There's really a non-existent story in those games. They like set you up with like a small story, like in Monster Hunter Tri for the Wii U. They had like there's a monster causing earthquakes. You go kill it, and here are some filler quests in between to do that. And that was pretty much the whole story, but the game, like 99% of the game is spent of you actually playing it as opposed to like watching cutscenes. That's why I didn't really enjoy a game like The Last of Us. I know a lot of people. Yeah,
I saw your face.
Yeah, I don't think a game needs to have cutscenes all the time to be good. Like, I think Grand Theft Auto 5. Or Grand Theft Auto 4 for that matter. Since we're gonna skip that and go back to Grand Theft Auto 4. It doesn't need all of the cutscenes to be good because there are the conversations when you're playing. Because Nico's not alone the entire time. So when he's with a character like Elisabetta or with Paki or with something like that, he's having conversations while you're playing the game. So not only are you enjoying the gameplay, but you're getting character development.
Which actually, I kind of want to bring it back to what you were talking about with Grand Theft Auto, where they have a lot of dialogue within the gameplay and that. I think that's a really good idea because it like keeps you going in the gameplay, and actually a perfect example, because I just brought it up, would have been Dead Space 2 in particular. Had very solid gameplay, but it only has a few cutscenes here and there for big events, but most of the game is driven while you're playing the game and through like intercom systems, or like even BioShock for that matter.
Yeah.
Like you're playing all the while the cutscenes are going on and the story's developing, but you're still playing the game. It doesn't take you out.
It's like you're still playing the game, but it's like kind of like you're in an enclosed room and you can't really progress until the story or the plot actually progresses itself.
Dead Space, is it pretty much, I've never played either of the Dead Space games, but are they pretty much just him alone?
The first two are. The third one, they were trying to go for a co-op route. It was not as good as the other Dead Spaces. I'd still say it's pretty fun though.
I mean, I feel like maybe that's another thing that I have issues with is when it's a single character story, such as Dead Space, when there's no really room for the character to develop because there's no conversation. It might be something really
it's funny that you bring that up because I was talking about it earlier, Shadow of the Colossus. There's really only one character in that game. It's Wander, and like there's barely any exposition at all. The longest cutscene is probably the intro cutscene, and that's like only about 5 minutes long. But from the intro cutscene, you can really pinpoint what the story is about, why you're doing what you're doing, and you can already feel a connection with the character. By the end of the game, you feel such a deep connection with the character. I actually like sort of cried at the ending. Have you played?
I haven't. I've only played a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus, but like another thing that seems to draw a parallel to is the downloadable game Journey, where it's there is actually no communication, and it's actually a fairly short game, but. Unfortunately, I haven't played it, but from everything I've heard from like all my friends and that they say, it is an incredible experience.
A lot of people have
any communication.
A lot of people have been calling it like, well, it would have been last generation now, but this generation's Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, that's what it pretty much feels like that from what I've seen.
Like a masterpiece.
Yeah.
The closest to like kind of a masterpiece form of art in a game, I think. And that's not saying like I don't appreciate a good story in a game. Take, for example, the Final Fantasy games. I love Final Fantasy. I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. I'll be the first to admit it. But like, they have a good story. Most of them, like 13's story was kind of laissez, fallacy.
Most of them have a little bit of they at least have one part where you're scratching your head or like an awkward moment.
And like a lot of cutscenes, it's a cutscene driven game. But also the gameplay is, I think, on par, if not more superior than the storytelling. Which I think is the key to like how I enjoy a game. If the gameplay isn't like backing up where the story is, then I really won't enjoy it. Like I was trying to play The Last of Us. I bought it when it came out, and I was trying to play through it. But I don't know. I just found it so boring because maybe it was just because like the game doesn't really pick up until like after the beginning.
Well, it might also depend on how were you going about playing it? Is I think what I want to know. Well, were you trying to go for stealth, or were you just like wanting to sort of run?
See, a little bit of both, really.
Okay.
Because I was really trying, because like I understand like you have options in each encounter. You can do it stealthily. It's kind of like Metal Gear Solid 4, where you can like really choose how to approach a situation. But I just thought like. The cutscenes where I didn't really feel. I mean, it might make me feel like a really like stoic or cold-hearted person, but I don't like when games try to get too cinematic on me. I just want to play the game,
Actually, for me, it's like I've been following the development of Last of Us since it was announced, and they said they took heavy inspiration from Children of Men and The Road, which two movies. Children of Men is my favorite movie, and The Road is definitely up there. So. Like, if it was a movie, I would absolutely love it.
Yeah, but, like, I feel like the cinematics are, like, in the way of me and playing the game,
I can see that.
I think for me, gameplay to me does matter. And it is sometimes difficult for me to enjoy a game without good gameplay, just because if you're only hitting one button, you get bored. Like, the story can be amazing, but you
get time events.
Quick time events, exactly. Which is why I didn't like Heavy Rain, because it's literally just bashing a button. But I think with certain games, like Assassin's Creed, for example, Assassin's Creed I loved. The second one I loved. I thought Ezio and his story was amazing.
I love Assassin's Creed too.
After Ezio's story in the games, the gameplay does not change whatsoever. With Connor, it's the same control, same gameplay, same appearance, same everything. And the same thing, Black Flag introduces more naval warfare and stuff like that. But the stories of Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed Black Flag, to me, even though the gameplays are exactly the same, are amazing. I don't like 3. I don't like Connor's story. But I think because of Edward Kenway's story, that is what made me want to play the game. It was so enthralling.
Well, see, I actually agree with you to a point with what you just said. Like, Assassin's Creed 2, probably my favorite Assassin's Creed game, and it's actually like one of my favorite games.
Absolutely.
ever. But like you said before, the combat is actually really basic. I think the main gameplay draw for Assassin's Creed 2 for me was like the amount of freedom you have with your mobility and just hopping on roofs and stuff like that. And like from transitioning from Assassin's Creed 1 to 2, Ezio moves so much faster than Altair.
Oh yeah.
So like it was just that sense of freedom that I really liked.
Well, I haven't played Assassin's Creed since 2. 2 was the last one I beat, and I'm like halfway through Brotherhood. And so I'm a bit foreign on Black Flag and Assassin's Creed 3, but it really seems like they sort of did a like main character OP type of thing, where it's mainly you can take out an entire squadron of enemies just to get to the next point.
Well, I mean,
it's almost like from what you guys are saying, I don't have much of a perspective on the new games.
Games like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising really empower the player with the amount of strength you have as a player to like cut down enemies and things like that.
But those are kind of fantasy-based games. So, I mean, they're not like completely imaginary, but they have this vibe that makes you feel like you're supposed to be that way.
Well, yeah, but the point I was getting at is like, the gameplay in those games are so superb. Even though like you feel powerful, you still feel like you can get beat. And the story really reflects that very well in those games, even though it's really, I would say like basic story, it's like good versus evil, not really many plot twists like Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising. They were kind of, you could predict like how the game was going to end, but that wasn't the point of the game. It wasn't like to go through the story, it was to play the game, So like the combat mechanics, things like that. And also, I want to bring up Pokemon.
Oh my god.
Like,
Pokemon.
Can you tell me the story of Pokemon? Like, not really. But
they just start adding in new creatures.
The meta game of Pokemon is so deep.
Basically, if you just listen to the theme song for Pokemon, you've got the gist of the story.
But not the theme song. The gameplay of Pokemon is so deep. The meta game, it has such a deep.
The theme
metagame.
song's pretty deep too.
Yeah, it is deep. But those areas are so enthralling. It doesn't matter if there's a story or not because you're getting so immersed in leveling your Pokemon, breeding them, training them, things of that nature. So, the story just really takes a back seat to the actual gameplay, which I enjoy. So, if the gameplay wasn't there, then Pokemon would be an awful game,
Well, because there'd be nothing to it.
There'd be nothing to it.
Maybe I've never been able to pick up and stick with Pokemon, and I've tried several times. Honestly, I've when it first started to come out, and back when they were just cards, and then when they started introducing...
Well, the games came first.
Well, back when it was people mostly played the cards, at least back where I'm from.
Okay.
Wait, people actually played the cards?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Pokemon.
Bro,
I just
at least
collected them.
When I grew up, people actually played with the cards. They didn't. Nobody was playing the games
But
because
we're talking about the games here.
But the games, I didn't like them, and I think it was just because for me it was just standing around with imaginary creatures fighting. That was how my interpretation was. I don't know. It's changed a bit, but
there wasn't enough plot for you.
Yeah, with and I'm gonna go back to Guild Wars 2, which you and I play, and then you kind of.
I played a bunch, and I kind of wanted it to just be Guild Wars 1.
I guess you could say MMOs in general.
Well, depends.
Depends. Your cookie cutter stereotypical MMO. You think of World of Warcraft. There's a story to it, but it doesn't bog you down and shoving this information down your ear, telling you all this lore and stuff.
Well, no,
it just wants you to play the game.
I think with Guild Wars 2, because that's the one I've put so much of my time into. Not nearly as many hours as you, but plenty of time. Not only is there the character story, which goes in so many different directions based on whatever race you are, whatever classification or anything along those lines, but ArenaNet adds in all of these ambient conversations. So you're walking around and you will hear NPCs and city folk talking to each other, and you pick up different aspects of the folk.
And this has more to do with the presentation than the actual storytelling.
But it contributes to the story.
Yeah.
And I think the gameplay to it is incredible. I think the game itself is beautiful. And the leveling up features, all of that, I'm moving on just to my fourth character now, and I love it. But I think the story itself has such an impact. And I think one thing ArenaNet does really well is adding in the living story. To have a story that's constantly changing and encouraging you to become part of it and learn more about what's going on once you get past your personal story, and then having all of those characters that have these conversations within the game. And it is a gameplay mechanic, and it does help with the environment and make you feel more immersed, but it also, for me at least, expands the story. And it makes me understand what's going on in a way that I wouldn't if it was only the gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, the gameplay is superb. Like, there's a really deep, building different sets and builds, how you trait your things if you're a ranger, how you manage your pets. Each class has their own little gimmicks and nuances that you have to pay attention to. But it's also reflected in the story in terms of quality, where the story is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm just... I think with Guild Wars 2, it's just there's a learning curve with we're really with all MMOs, and that one seems a bit higher than usual type of things for me at least. Whereas Guild Wars 1, I kind of hopped right into that and I figured out the gist of it, and then over the course of a year or so, I really started getting into how to make a really good build and how to combine different classes and things of the sort.
World of Warcraft is actually not that different when it comes to learning how to play it too, because
World of Warcraft versus Guild Wars 2 or 1?
Well, I'm just saying
you can
in
jump
general, you can jump to World of Warcraft, understand how to play it, but if you played it for enough, you'll learn all the little nuances and how to actually the competitive metagame of it,
Right.
But that's all. I'm glad we finally discovered that Tam is wrong and I'm right.
What? No, you're right.
But that's all the time we have for. So thank you both for joining us, and stay tuned for more Press Start.